أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم من همزه ونفخه ونفثه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Dear participants and respected Professor Dr. Azmi, thank you very much for joining us. Islamic finance education is increasingly important because of the industry growth. Islamic finance is growing faster than the regular equivalents in certain markets and is even being adopted by many non-Muslim clients. Islamic finance assets are currently worth around $2.7 trillion worldwide and is set to hit $3 trillion by 2024. Keeping in view the tremendous growth of Islamic finance, the education can ensure a promising career because exponential expansion of the Islamic finance industry is the world has created a severe shortfall of trained human capital. This gap is usually filled by different universities and educational institutions, and INSEEF is one of them and is playing its pivotal role to fill this gap. For today's training webinar session, we welcome Professor Dr. Muhammad Azmi Umar. Is a president and chief executive officer of the International Center for Education in Islamic Finance in SIF, Malaysia. Prior to his current position, he served as a Director General at Islamic Research and Training Institute, IRTI, Islamic Development Bank Group, Jeddah, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. At IRTI, Dr. Azmi pioneered and introduced an innovation policy research which culminated in flagship reports such as IRTI Islamic Social Finance Report and IDB World Bank Global Report on Islamic Finance. Dr. Azmi has also provided advice and technical assistance in Islamic finance to several IDB member countries. Now I would like to invite Dr. Muhammad Azmi Umar to please start your kind lecture on the relevant topic. Thank you very much. Now floor is yours.
Thank you very much, the moderator, Brother Zubair Mughar from AlHuda, students and participants from this lecture. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And depending on where you are, it could be good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. First, let me thank the AlHuda for inviting me to share my thoughts on this topic, which is titled The Need for Research-Based Innovation for Islamic Finance Industry. Without wanting to talk purely from the research perspective, I would like to relate to what we are today, the situation we are today, and how we can use Islamic finance in order to bring about more change to the community that we live in, to the economy of our country as well as globally. So as you know, we are currently in the midst of COVID-19, and we expect that COVID-19 will continue to be with us for this year and possibly next year. And the impact of COVID-19 is very severe, not only in the context of health, but also in the context of economic implications. For example, if you look in terms of health alone, we have close to 32 million individuals who are affected by COVID-19, and number of deaths about 980,000, and close to 1 million in fact. And many countries, hospitals, including healthcare workers, are paying a major price, and some of them were infected as they work and try to to recuperate and help the patients who are infected with COVID-19. Government also has tried to implement a number of measures in order to address this COVID-19. And from the lockdown that is being implemented across many countries, as well as the what we call it, the limitations in terms of how people can move and do business. So as a result, the lockdown has really impacted the health of the individuals, of families, as well as the economic health of a particular country. So much so that IMF, in its recent June forecast, stated that the global economy will drop to, or will have a recession by 2020, and the figure is estimated to be negative 4.9%. And they estimate for 2021, the global economy will again recover to about 5.4% for 2021. So as the country and the government try to balance between what we call lives and livelihood, lives meaning that the focus is on protecting individuals from being infected by COVID-19, as well as livelihood, the focus is on ensuring economic security for individuals to continue to have income in order to live. The government has to manage these two interests delicately. However, because of the lockdown, many lower income and also to a certain extent middle income individuals are impacted very badly. Many people are unemployed due to businesses not able to operate, as well as many individuals have received and continue to seek financial support from the government. Again, the amount of financial support given by different governments would depend very much upon the availability of funds that a particular country has. At the same time, we also see that the number of individuals under the poverty level has increased, and the businesses of micros as well as SMEs are also badly affected by this. So much so that we say this is a pandemic that we have never experienced before, maybe during our grandfather's time when you had in the early 1918, but during our lifetime, this is the most severe pandemic that we ever experienced. So moving forward, if you look at the development of Islamic finance today, you see that the outlook for Islamic finance is also quite grim, in the sense that Islamic banks, takaful companies are affected due to the what we call in Malaysia moratorium. In other countries, you would call it payment holidays, which means that customers are not able to pay. Customers are given reprieve and will not pay their financing amount for a certain period. For some countries, it's 3 months. In other countries, it's 6 months, and so on. So customers, bank clients are given reprieve for not paying their financing for a number of periods. This is again in order to ensure that they would have the money in order to continue to pay for their food and rental. However, because of this moratorium, banks and takaful companies and financial institutions at large are impacted, and this put pressure on their profitability as well as on their liquidity. So much so that you will see towards the end of the year or towards early next year, when financial institutions produce the report, you will see a significant impact towards their profitability, and possibly their capital will also be impacted. Moving forward, if you look at sukuk market this year has, especially at the beginning of the year, has gone down, but now we see a significant increase due to companies and government taking advantage of the low interest rate or low profit margin. So we see countries are now trying to raise money, companies are also trying to raise money, given a positive climate now in terms of the rates, and use those money in order to help them to operate as regular as possible. So amid these gloomy and grim circumstances, we also see some positive development. We see many groups, many individuals, many regulators, and including, of course, economists, are now promoting the use of Islamic social finance, such as zakat, wakaf, sadaqah, qard hasan, as potential solutions to support the real economy, as well as to assist the rebooting of businesses of micros as well as SMEs. And secondly, we also see a significant increase in the usage of digital transactions, particularly for e-commerce as well as financial transactions. So people have moved because of the concern about contact, so they want to avoid physical contact. So individuals have moved towards using more digital transactions. And that is, of course, a positive thing positive thing, not only to the financial sector as whole, but also to the Islamic financial sector. And one important, interesting element is that the environment becomes cleaner now as people travel less and less, both within and outside the country. So there are certain positive things happening and also negative things that occur currently. So given the current situation and the opportunity it presents, how do we ensure that Islamic finance remain relevant and continue to provide solutions to the current and post-COVID-19 pandemic period? Many people would argue that we need to have more research-based innovation in order to bring the Islamic finance industry to the next level. I would argue, yes, we need that. We need to have more research-based innovation, but we need to have much more than that. So my point is that we have to look at both components. One is we have to go back and look at the basics of Islamic finance, i.e. the value propositions of Islamic finance, and we need to prove that the value proposition of Islamic finance are in fact true and relevant to the current period as well as to the post-COVID-19 pandemic period. And I will talk a bit detail about that. And secondly, we need to develop innovative-based solutions that is based on maqasid al-Sharia for the Islamic finance industry. Too long, we have been talking about the Islamic finance industry is supporting and doing many great things, but we are unable to prove those things. So now, coming to the idea, what I am saying is that first thing that we need to do is we need to go back to the basics and conduct research on the basics of Islamic finance, i.e. that is research on the value proposition of Islamic finance, okay? The value proposition of Islamic finance, and at the same time, of course, conduct both theoretical, applied, as well as policy research, innovative research, in order to bring Islamic finance industry to the next level. Let me go to the first part, that is on the value proposition of Islamic finance. Research on the value proposition of Islamic finance. We always say that Islamic finance is responsible finance, it is ethical because we do not engage in gambling, we do not engage in speculative activities, we do not engage in riba activities, among others. But the question is that, is Islamic finance really ethical finance, really fulfilling what we claim to be? It is responsible, it is ethical. Which means that, for example, we need to develop research to look at the theoretical as well as the applied research in terms of the implementation of those principles in Islamic financial services industry, for example. So that's one, okay? So in that way, we are able to see whether, one, Islamic financial institutions are operating based on the principles that we claim to adhere to. One way of looking at this is to look at the Sharia governance framework and the amount of Sharia non-compliance as well as the amount of, the percentage of Sharia non-compliance as well as the amount of tainted funds that are in Islamic financial institutions. That will also tell you to a certain extent whether they have actually be fulfilling the role of responsible and ethical finance institution. Those are, for example, some examples that we can look at in terms of conducting research to look at whether Islamic financial institutions are fulfilling the role of responsible and ethical financing institutions. The second one is we always say that Islamic financial system is a resilient financial system. It is much more stable than conventional system. It is linked to the real economy. It is resistance to external shocks, as well as it has higher prudential standards due to the Sharia governance framework. But the question is, are we really financing real economy? How many percent of Islamic financial transactions are based on real economy transactions, for example? Do we have that data? Do we have those figures to back us up? I'm not saying we do not, but I'm saying is that we need to research to look at that. So whether we are really implementing what we say, that is financing based on real economy. And secondly, Islamic financial institutions, an Islamic financial system is more resilient and able to withstand external shocks. Of course, a couple of studies earlier on that look at the global financial crisis and the impact towards Islamic banks. And most studies tend to find that Islamic banks are less susceptible to the global financial crisis because of how Islamic finance conducts its operation, the kind of asset liability that they have in their balance sheet that makes them less susceptible. However, those were during the 2008 financial crisis. We can look at today and see whether Islamic banks continue to be more resilient, more financially stable. The third value proposition that we can look at is what we say sound regulation and governance. We have a very high level of trust. We have the best governance because we not only have corporate governance, we also have Sharia governance. So what we need to look in this particular context is to see whether Islamic financial institutions and whether Islamic financial sector as a whole has incorporated the Sharia governance as well as the corporate governance in its charter. Okay, and in relation to that also, we also would like to see how is the link between Islamic financial services industry with the environment. Why? Because we must implement and prove that Islamic finance has good governance systems, has good evaluation in terms of the impact towards the community, towards the society, towards the environment. So we have to look at that particular perspective and develop research to see how Islamic financial institutions are implementing, for example, the SDGs, the impact towards environment, towards the community, towards the governance. Okay, so that is the third area of value proposition of Islamic finance. The fourth one is we always claim that Islamic finance has broader market access. Why? Because Muslims do not participate in conventional banking. So having Islamic finance enable Muslims to participate. As a result, the number of clients for Islamic financial institution will be enhanced. I.e., in this particular context, we see Islamic finance as one of the tools to increase financial inclusions of Muslims. So the usage such as Islamic microfinance, Islamic social finance tools are used to bring more Muslims into the financial sector. The question, is it true? Can we conduct research on this in order to prove that yes, it is so true, and we can prove that through empirical data, as an example. The final one is on, the final value proposition is on the expanding source of funding. We say that for companies that promote, for example, Sukuk, they will be able to access not only conventional funds, but also access Islamic funds. Hence, the demand for Sukuk will increase regularly and in every issue. And of course, that depends on the market itself, depending where the market is located. Again, these are potential research areas that we can look at in order to bring about the value proposition of Islamic finance, to say that yes, the basics of Islamic finance, i.e. the value proposition of Islamic finance, are supported based on empirical research. So not only theoretical, but also based on empirical research. Now, let me go to a couple of I would say, research that are important in this particular context. I will not go into all areas, but I want to go into a couple of areas that I think are very important in this particular case, in this particular period of COVID-19. Why I focus on a couple of areas is because I believe that we need to provide urgent solutions, innovative solutions to the current situation. I think one of the things that is dear to me is the issue of Islamic social finance. We see that governments, organizations, social organizations, and many individuals are saying that given the current situation that we are in, the impact towards the economy, impacts to the society, where many people are now becoming poorer, how do we use Islamic social finance tools such as zakat, sadaqah, qadr hasan, wakaf, as tools to help to alleviate poverty and to address issues in the current period? Okay. We do see now that many Muslims, individuals particularly, give money for this purpose. Particularly in the last Ramadan, you see a lot of individuals pay their zakat, sadaqah in order to help those people who are affected by COVID-19. So to me, I think one of the important things to do in this particular case is to look at how we can utilize zakat efficiently from end to end, which means that not only from the collection side, but also to the distribution side. We want to see how transparent the zakat collection until the distribution part. Next, we would like to see what is the impact of zakat being collected and distributed. So most of the work done so far has not looked at the impact assessment of utilization, the impact assessment of not only collection, but also distribution of zakat. As we know, it's not important, it is more important to give a fishing net rather than a fish to a poor people, which means that what we need to do is to look at the zakat program and how zakat can really be impactful in order to alleviate poverty of asnaf beneficiaries, for example. So there is a need to develop an impact assessment framework for zakat, and that framework will look from end to end. So that's one, okay, the impact assessment. And obviously part of the impact assessment is the issue of traceability. We want to see the money flows from the collection to the beneficiaries, and there is clear transparency that money is being distributed to its intended beneficiaries, and the cost of administration is well below the approved limit. For example, when we provide money to certain NGOs, or we provide zakat money to certain NGOs, how many percent are being used for management administration, as an example? So those are important questions. So traceability is very important. Impact assessment is very important for zakat. The same goes for the wakaf, as an example. We have been talking about wakaf as a tool of instruments, not only for poverty, but also to provide a number of services for Muslims and non-Muslims in Muslim countries. We have seen historically how wakaf is being used not only for education, for health, for public services, and so on. But today, we have seen limited applications of wakaf. So hence, there is a need to develop innovative solutions for wakaf so that wakaf can realize its true potential. And look at specific examples that are being implemented in Muslim countries as well as non-Muslim countries, and see how we can learn and emulate, and again develop impact assessment framework as well as the issue of traceability for wakaf. And finally, I would like to talk about two more things. That is on the digitalization. to support Islamic social finance such as wakaf, zakat, sadaqah, we need to enhance the use of fintech, the use of digital technology in order to bring more Muslims into the financial sector, in order to bring about the transfer of payments to the poor, how poor not only receive but also make payments, and later on they will be able to become zakat payer rather than zakat beneficiary. So digitalization is another component that we look at. And finally, the issue of maqasid al-Sharia, particularly in the context of environment today, Islamic finance not only must be concerned about negative screening, which we tend to say the avoidance of gambling, riba, speculative activities. Islamic finance must also focus on positive screening, i.e. looking at, for example, whether Islamic finance will have a negative impact towards the community, even if it is providing Sharia compliant or halal financing or Islamic financing, whether that financing brings positive impact to the community or to the environment. Hence, the role of positive screening is very important. Screening in the context of the impact towards environment, the impacts towards community, and of course, the impacts towards how the governance is being implemented in that particular organization or sector. So those are my ideas in terms of why we need to conduct research-based innovation in order to bring about Islamic finance to the next level. So I've talked about the need to focus on the basics, i.e. the value proposition of Islamic finance. We must conduct research to prove that, yes, those value propositions are true rather than we claim, but without having evidence to prove that. So at the same time, given the current situation, I propose that we need to look at a couple of things. One is utilization of Islamic social finance instruments, such as zakat, wakaf, and sadaqah, and how we need to develop the impact assessment framework, how we need to develop traceability in order to ensure that Islamic social finance really support and help people who are in need today. And to do that, of course, we need to look at the use of digital technologies, particularly fintech, in order to bring the application of Islamic social finance as well as Islamic finance into the broader Muslim community and the world at large. And finally, I talk about Islamic finance to introduce positive screening, so that I'm not talking about the equity market, I'm talking about the banking, particularly the financial sector, banking and takaful, how banking and takaful industry should consider ESG, the maqasid al-Sharia, the environment, social, and governance factor in their financing, investment decision, and takaful protection division. So that's all. Thank you very much. And I open the floor for questions and answers.
Thank you very much for your kind presentation. Now I would like to welcome the questions from the participants. Please, if you have any questions, kindly raise your hand to ask the questions. Yes, please, dear participants, any questions from the participant side? Yes, Brother Webby want to ask the questions. Please, Brother Webby, please ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Okay. I'm representing Islamic Microfinance Institution in Kosovo since 2002. I'm also graduated from INSIF, where our brother Professor Azmi is representing. I was graduated in 2011, and I gained very valuable knowledge, especially practical knowledge from that university. Now, you know, these questions about Islamic finance in general are very, very important. I was raising many times an issue why hasn't been done sufficient efforts and support toward Islamic microfinance institutions, which I think they are still doing some Islamic social finance. And I think they're involved in more Islamic core values, as I may say. Many people, they rushed to go and regulate the billion-dollar sector like any, you know, like big Islamic banks or sukuk or everything. I know that these needs to be regulated as well and need to be supported. But to not forget about the Islamic microfinance institutions, they have been set alone like an orphans. And because I'm talking maybe a little bit from my little bit of frustration from all these years, because almost 2 decades I'm involved in Islamic microfinance industry. And I felt on my own skin this lack of support and lack of technical support, lack of financing, lack of Sharia advices in this kind of things that Islamic microfinance needs. But I'm how can I say now, a little bit happy, if I may say, that the question now raised, is it Islamic finance doing its purpose, or are they doing, you know, for what they have been established for all Islamic financial institutions? I mean, you know, there are many things that I wanted to share, but I just don't want to finish now.
Okay, thank you very much for the comments as well as the question. I do agree that, especially in the context of Islamic microfinance, that is not much work being done, particularly from the regulatory, from the prudentials, as well as on the Sharia governance side. We see the focus has been very much on banking, takaful, sukuk, Islamic funds, and so on, but not much work being done. But nevertheless, the implementation of Islamic microfinance in a number of countries is, I would say, quite an achievement. I see this in some African countries, countries in Southeast Asia, particularly Indonesia. They're very strong in, and particularly, of course, Bangladesh. They're very strong in Islamic microfinance. They, not only in terms of the number of clients or customers has increased, the number of what we call number of Islamic microfinance institutions in those countries have also increased quite substantially. But also there are some support given to those Islamic microfinance institutions for example, in Indonesia and some other countries. So we do see that the progress of Islamic microfinance is not as great as Islamic banks or takaful companies, okay, for that matter. However, in a number of countries like Indonesia, Bangladesh, and some African countries like Sudan, Islamic microfinance is growing very well, and they have good, I would say, governance framework and regulations to support the development. I think that kind of thing is something that we should be learning from each other. For example, should you need support and ideas on Islamic microfinance, how to grow them, how to develop a framework, I can link you with institutions in, for example, Indonesia that is more advanced in Islamic microfinance. So in fact, in that regard, even INSEF works with some Islamic microfinance institutions in Indonesia in order to learn and study how they are able to reduce poverty and bring more poor people into the financial sector. So that's the answer to the question.
Yes, I just wanted from you to hear that if there will be more support Islamic microfinance institutions, do you think that is one of the solutions that we are talking today?
Yes, I fully propose the idea that, see, we have to look at Islamic finance not as a monolithic institution. We have to look at it from a broader perspective. That is, we have different financial institutions to support different needs of the society in an economy. For example, of course, banks are important. We need to have banks, we need to have takaful operators, we need to have sukuk. But at the same time, for certain segments of the society, we need to have Islamic microfinance. Not only Islamic microfinance, you may also need, for example, Hajj fund companies dedicated to help Muslims to save in order to perform Hajj as well as Umrah. So we need to look at the different types of financial institutions in order to meet different needs of the segments of society in a particular country. So obviously, Islamic microfinance plays a very important role, and Muslims generally would like it to see it to be successful, because it helps to bring about, one, the issue of financial inclusion, secondly, the issue of poverty alleviation, because we have seen the success of Islamic microfinance in order to bring people from the poverty level into the next level, higher level. So again, those two main issues are very important, and they are part of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now the next question is from Mr. Abu Bakr.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam.
Prof, my name is Abu Bakr Muhammad Musa, one of the first sets of INSEF, graduate 2007.
MashaAllah.
We are really proud of you, sir, and your work in so many areas, especially in Jeddah, in IIUM, and then now we are proud to even have you in INSEF. We're so much proud of you.
Thank you.
Sir, my question is, what is the current move by INSEF to direct students like us and others towards research-based findings from their theses and their projects? Is there any move in that direction, as you mentioned here now, that most of the researches in Islamic banking and finance are mostly, you can put under quote, they are claims. The zakat will end poverty, the zakat will do this, Waqf will do this, Waqf will do that, But the empirical evidence that really shows that Islamic banking and finance is actually positively affecting the life of those consumers. Sir, is there any move now to direct students' research towards that goal? And what are the ways that can produce productive researches to prove that actually the impact is being felt? Thank you, sir. I'm calling from Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's the beauty of having this Zoom. We can meet globally in one place, in one room, in one window, okay, without having to travel physically. Okay, thank you for the question. On the move by INSEF to direct students towards research-based work, particularly empirical evidence, to prove that Islamic finance do what it claims to do. Okay, let me talk a bit about what INSEF is currently doing. See, one of the things that since I took over is that as part of the strategy to replace internship, is we have introduced what we call action-based learning. Okay. So action-based learning is where we train students to become researchers come consultants to Islamic financial services industry. Okay, so yes, students are required to do action-based learning for one semester. So how do we do it? We engage Islamic financial institutions as well as companies in different sectors to sign MOU with us and to share with us the problems they face. Okay? The problems they face. And based on the problems that they share with us, we scope the problems and we get our students to provide solutions to that problem. So this is a real work. For example, I give you, we send our students to Indonesia to develop an impact assessment framework for affordable housing. And that affordable housing is based on Islamic finance. So they develop an Islamic, basically crowdfunding platform, and they provide financing based on the Murabaha to buyers of this affordable housing. So we came in to look at the whole project, and we then developed impact assessment framework for that particular institution. So to see that, and to say that, not only to see, but also to say that, yes, by using Islamic crowdfunding platform, we have raised this X amount of money, and the number of individuals who have benefited, and what are the, the overall impact towards that community when this is being implemented. So this is one example. Another example is where we work with Islamic financial institutions in Malaysia to develop a, what we call here, value-based intermediation framework. I.e., that is, we develop a framework and tools, okay, for Islamic financial institutions to use before they decide on providing financing to their clients, whether those financings meet the Maqasid Syariah principles or not. It's not just a matter of, yes, a company is asking for 10 million financing to do, to develop a property, for example. So it's not that. So we develop a framework and tools for Islamic financial institutions to do that. So they implement that tool, and based on that, they will then decide should they provide financing to a particular company or not. If, let's say, the decision is not to provide financing, we also develop tools in the context of how to handhold that company in order to meet the Maqasid Syariah principles. So rather than you turn down, but you handhold, you bring them together. So financial institutions working with companies to ensure that the companies meet the Maqasid Syariah principles. So those are the things that we are doing now. And I believe when we talk about research, of course, there are many types of research, as you know, research based on theory, based on empirical, as well as policy research. Just a few hours ago, I was moderating a session with Bank Indonesia in Bank Indonesia event, where we also talk about similar things. And of course, because Bank Indonesia is a regulator, they're talking about having more policy research. So currently, there is a lack of policy research that regulators can use in order to implement. Okay, for example, liquidity management issues. Okay, Islamic banks face liquidity problems now.
Seriously?
What liquidity instruments can be developed now? Say, for example, if we are not in favor of Tawaro, the commodity marabah, what are the solutions for the central bank? What kind of instruments? And how does central banks implement monetary policy in a dual system? Like, for example, in your country, Nigeria, you have both conventional and interest-free system. You call it interest-free, right? So when central bank implement monetary policy, both for those two so-called systems, how do you implement that? So this kind of policy work must be done, and of course, in collaboration with the regulator. So we see that Islamic finance has a lot of, research in Islamic finance has a lot of potentials and opportunities. We choose where we want to be, whether we want to focus on the policy side, we want to focus on the empirical side, like the one that I mentioned earlier on what we are doing with some companies, or we want to focus on the theoretical side. Theory is also very important because theory will guide us to move the direction of Islamic finance. Okay, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you very much for your kind questions and then answers. Now I would like to invite our respected CEO, Mr. Mohammad Zubail Mughal, for the closing words.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, thank you very much, His Excellency Professor Dr. Azmi Umar, for such a wonderful presentation. I'm very thankful to you, and we always appreciate your efforts for the development of Islamic banking and finance all over the world. Either yourself in IIUM, IRTI, or now, Alhamdulillah, you are in INSEAD. So thank you very much for your valuable time, and we are looking forward to see you again very soon as well. I'm also thankful to all our participants to join us in this informative session through Zoom and through Facebook and YouTube Live. Inshallah ta'ala, AlHuda Center for Islamic Banking and Economics will continue to offer such research-based webinar in the future as well. Day after tomorrow, we have one webinar with Mr. Yahya Abdul Rahman, CEO and Chairman of La Riba System, Bank of VTL, USA. Thank you very much, and looking forward to greet all the participants again. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Jazakallah.
Jazakallah khairan.
Jazakallah.